Well, Toronto's red-hot housing market stalled last month as home sales and prices declined. That's not something we're used to saying about the country's largest market, which has been on a tear as low rates and the work-from-home trend drive demand. All of a sudden, though, momentum screeched to a halt in April, and the local real estate board chalking it up to early signs of a maxed-out pool of prospective buyers. Let's talk more about that pool of buyers and sellers with longtime real estate watcher John Pasalis, who runs Realosophy. John, thanks for being with us. What did you make of this new data on the Toronto housing market?
Yeah, not entirely surprising. We've been seeing this on the ground for the past 4 to 6 weeks. And what's really happening is, COVID pulled a lot of demand forward, which is why we had an unbelievably competitive summer last month and fall market last year. And because of that, the market's just starting to lose steam. And usually it doesn't lose steam this time of year. Usually sales pick up in April, May, and June. But because a lot of that demand got pulled forward, we're seeing, kind of demand start to slow down right now a little bit early.
So I guess for any prospective buyers who were saying to you, John, this is getting crazy, like I don't know what I'm going to do, actually there is some normalcy perhaps returning to the market?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in the low-rise market, which was the most competitive, buyers are finding it interesting. The houses that normally would have gotten 5, 10, 15 offers aren't getting any offers or 1 or 2. It's not as competitive. Buyers are starting to be quite a bit more patient. And there's less anxiety in the market. And I think that part of that has to do with the fact that, prices aren't surging as rapidly as they were. Between November of last year and January this year, prices accelerated about 16% literally in 2-3 months. And since then, they've just plateaued. So definitely not as much anxiety on the ground for the low-rise market.
I'm just curious, anecdotally, outside of COVID pulling forward some demand, have you heard from people saying, quite frankly, the price, it doesn't make sense for me? We're already a stretched nation when it comes to debt. It's just starting to seem a little bit strange to be paying that much more for a home.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We're starting to see that. And it's a combination of people who are just deciding to move out of the city. When I say the city, I don't mean Toronto. I mean like the whole greater Toronto area, or just deciding to rent because it's so expensive. And definitely we're starting to see that. And I think that's one of the reasons why, demand's kind of unwinding pretty early right now.
Now, there is this longer-term view, and it's something you've talked with us about many times over the last few years, that for Canada to grow, we need our population to grow. We need more immigration, which is something that in many ways cooled off because of the pandemic, but which we are very much expecting to return in the future. So how would you characterize this short-term housing picture versus what the long-term trends are likely going to show for us as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the challenge right now is that prices are quite high, which of course is going to impact, the number of people who want to immigrate and move to the Toronto area. If housing's unaffordable, it starts becoming a less attractive place to live. And I think what's going to happen is, if we get an increase in non-permanent residents, which is really what drove a lot of the people moving to Ontario in the past 5 years, that's probably just going to help fuel the demand for the condo market. Condo market dipped a fair bit. Rents fell about 20%. So that'll help fuel rent prices. It'll help fuel condo prices, but probably low-rise prices are still going to stay high because we're not building a lot of them, and they're quite expensive as it is.
It's funny, when you're looking at markets in the short term, our attention can change very quickly. We go from talking about Bitcoin to Ethereum to Dogecoin as an example of the world of cryptocurrencies. But hearing you say all of this, it was just a matter of weeks ago where there were some real freakouts about where prices were going, and the need to see more action taken, whether it's, tougher stress tests for mortgages, or whether or not it's, governments taking steps like, finding ways to keep foreign home buyers from flipping homes to a more severe degree. Do you feel like if April trend becomes a trend, is something to watch for. Does that lessen the need to see, I guess, lawmakers step in and at least sort of throw ideas out there on what to do about a housing market that had seen such strong price demand?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, I do think policymakers were right to not try to cool demand by putting in measures that make it harder to first-time buyers to get into the market. But certainly, there's room for policies that make it harder for investors to get into the market. And really what's happening right now is while low-rise is slowing down, condos are on fire right now. I mean, condo prices have surged 10% literally in the past 3 months. A lot of that is just driven by investors pushing prices up, wanting to buy, rental properties. So when we think about sort of the negative things that help inflate home prices, certainly really, really strong demand from investors, and that's just both domestic and foreign, that push prices higher than they otherwise should be. So I do think that there's a good reason to kind of put in measures that make it harder for investors and eventually make it a little bit easier for end users.
One last question I wanted to ask you about. I'm curious how often you get questions from clients about the interest rate reality. The other factor out here is that there's it started in this country, sort of this growing course of expectations that we'll see rates start to rise. Even over the last 24 hours in the United States, there's been this dialogue on, did Janet Yellen mean what she said, or she didn't mean what she said on the need to raise interest rates to cool off a market? Are you hearing from more and more people about their belief that, well, maybe if things start to change on the interest rate front, that ultimately is another factor that could make buyers a bit cautious right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of leading to people to feel less anxious a little bit, certainly. I mean, I think some buyers are still a little bit hopeful that might lead to a correction. I don't necessarily think that's going to lead to a price decline, but I definitely think some buyers are hopeful that, rising interest rates might, kind of cool prices, which, I mean, it effectively makes it harder for them to obviously buy because it pushes up carrying costs. But I think it is definitely kind of having a bit of that impact on buyers today.